hit record, so you'll have to get up and come and press you. Sorry, Lisa, you've got your dog baby with you as well. Oh, messing everyone up this morning. Right, let's get into this. So we've got lovely SJ joining us this morning, so we're going to go a little bit deeper into those foundational bits and pieces that we talk about, because it's useful and it's never a bad thing for us to revisit those. So we just start with finding the back of the body on the ground and starting with the knees bent, soles of the feet into the floor. So doing this for 10 minutes at the end of the day will never do you any harm. Restoring space back into the body post 18 hours spent in gravity will not do you any harm. So we're just finding the heels, and we work with this sort of pulling down into the ground. We know that gravity pulls us down through the ground in towards the center of the earth. So we're never balancing on the earth, we're part of it. So we just find the smile at the back of the head. There's 3 smiles in the body. One is at the back of the head, so the pointy part of the back of the head. So if you draw a line from your nose straight back into the back of the head, that will take you into the part of the skull that allows the jaw to lift ever so slightly. We might have a tendency here to pull the jaw back in. You can hear it changes my voice, and that lengthens out the back of the neck, which can be useful, but it also can turn into a habit if we do it too long. So where can we find head at neutral? And there is an arch in the neck spine. So, and then we just have the hands over the body, the arms over the body, and just letting the long arm bones just drop back through their sockets. We're looking for a nice flat shoulder blade. Now you might have a flat plate on one side and another shoulder blade that's standing on its edge, but just taking time to feel that the chest can broaden. This brings us into the second smile, which is at the base of the ribs. So floating ribs and the last two ribs as we come down towards the tummy. And we think about that connection between, or the changeover between the ribby spine and the lumbar spine. So there's a significant change in sort of disc structure, and well, they haven't got ribs attached to them for a start, so they are different. But we're always looking to make space here. It is one of the places in our body that tends to get a little bit compressed. If you want to take the thumbs and just drop them into the V on the front of your ribs, then you can. So we've got this nice V shape on the front of the ribs to take you out towards the edges of the ribs. And again, the diaphragm is here, but also the top of your core muscles. We've got a corset of the waist, and some of the core muscles are here. And we just want to find that nice and soft. And if it's not soft, we're just very, very gentle. Just the weight of the thumbs, nothing more. We don't want to be poking and prodding around in there too much. And hopefully we feel that a space opens up, the lumbars can extend, the low spine can extend down towards the pelvis, and we want the sacrum to roll away like a drawbridge. It's rolling away towards the heels. Most of us spend a lot of our life with the pelvis tucked under. We want to send it in the other direction, particularly if you're a desk sitter. This is going to be you. So can we let the front of the hips disappear into the top of the legs, and the sit bones, the smile at the bottom of your bottom, this is the third smile, drops down into the ground. It'll feel like the whole pelvis is rolling away from you. The lumbars will lift ever so slightly off the floor, and that's okay because there's an arch here too, but we leave the ribs on the ground. So this is, if you've been practicing it, your wall standing. We've just changed our orientation to the ground. And this will help hip flexors to let go, front of the ankles to start to let go, and the feet can become nice and long. So we're just going to take the hands onto the front of the thighs. We're keeping the knees nice and still, just rolling the feet onto their outer edges and rolling the feet onto their inner edges. So we're creating space in the ankle, but we're also improving our inversion, where the soles look in at each other, and our eversion, where the soles of the feet look out towards the sides of your mat. And if the knees are wagging backwards and forwards, the hands on the thighs help to stabilize them, because we want the tissues at the ankle to free up and move. The toes will start to spread and soften, and we start to feel the spiral through the foot. And there's a big spiral that runs through the center of the foot, from the heel all the way out to the toes. And we want feet to move independently of shins. We want shins to move independently of the thigh. And it does that through the space that we call the ankle and knee joints. So from here, we're going to bring the hands back up onto the front of the hips. We're leaving the hips tilted away. So we've got that lovely heavy sit bones. And we can just let the right foot just become free from the floor, and the knee can float in towards us. So just noticing the point at where maybe the leg draws the hips into us. Can we leave the hips where they are and just leave the slide and glide at the hip joint? And then we're just going to be led by the big toe on the right side. We're dropping the shoulders into the ground, only because mine have just decided to come up around my ears. We still got our 3 smiles, yes we have. And we're just going to be led by the right big toe away towards the end of your mat. We're just dipping the toe in the puddle. Well, imagine there's a puddle at the end of your mat. Dipping the toes in and then bringing the knee back to the center. So your stabilizing factor is the corset of the waist, the underside of the ribs, because that's where your leg's attached to. And we're just taking the big toe out, dipping it in the puddle, and then coming back to center. So all the movement is happening at the hip joint. Head is heavy, jaw is heavy, shoulders are heavy. So there's just not much else happening.
Really special day. Amazing.
Oh, hello. And we're just going to do 2 more. And just resting foot back on the ground. Giving the knees a nice wave for a second, having a bit of a shake out. And then we're just going to stabilize down through the pelvis. Let the left knee float in towards you. And then again, we're just taking that left big toe. So left big toe inside of the heel, because this wakes up the inner thigh, pelvic floor, those sorts of connections. It's interesting, we tend to be a little bit led by the heel, we tend to be a little bit led by the outer side of the foot, because these are the big muscles that the brain knows it can rely on. But when we're led by the big toe joint to dip into the puddle, it's a different set of muscles. You should feel it on the inside of the hip bone in the central core system. And we're just going to do 3 more here. Noticing if one side feels different to the other. And we're just going to place the foot down. finding the feet again. We'll bring the arms up over the body, long arm bones just dropping back into their sockets. We're going to let the right heel get super, super heavy and just sliding the right heel away. So again, extending your leg from the underside of the right ribs, not from the hip, because your legs don't finish at the hip, they finish at the underside of the rib. So we're leading with the heel this time. Heel gets pulled away as far as it possibly can. So we've still got that rolling away sacrum. We've still got a slight arch to the lumbars and the ribs are heavy. We're going to feel like we're getting taken by the index finger of the left hand and the arm gets drawn away towards the top of your mat. So again, your arm doesn't finish at your shoulder, your arm finishes in the underside of the ribs. And the heavy, heavy heel and the lift at the index finger bring you back to center. And we'll go through on the other side. So left heel, right index finger this time. So we're looking to connect the left big toe and the inside of the heel through the inside of the leg, through the inside of the pelvis, through the inside of the opposite ribs, all the way out to the extended index finger. So we're making this diagonal across the body. And then the arm can drop through into the tummy and the heavy, heavy heel comes back to center. So we're just going to do a couple more alternating sides. Right heel, left hand, and then left heel, right hand. We really want to see if we can match the arm and the leg together. And they come together at the solar plexus because this is kind of where all your limbs, including your head, which is a limb, extend from. And we start to feel the muscles on the inside of the hips, maybe across the front of the tummy, between the hip bones start to work. So the next time the left heel and the right hand come in together, if it's nice to leave the heels on the ground, leave the heels on the ground. But if you're happy, you can just let the right knee float in towards you. Let the left knee float in towards you. Now again, we've got that rolled away sacrum. Not so much that the ribs come off the ground. So to pull the ribs back, we're pulling the front of the ribs, that V shape where we had our thumbs earlier, back towards the ground. The tendency will be that it pulls the pelvis in towards you, but we want to leave space. We don't want to be in a permanent contraction through the waist. We want there to be space there, but we want there to be integrity as well. So the pelvis is rolling away, the ribs are pulling back in, and the head is free because the head is heavy. So we've got our arms over our body. And then we're just going to take the right heel and just like somebody's got their hand underneath your right heel, just lengthening the right heel away towards the end of the mat. It might not be a big movement and that's okay. Pelvis doesn't move. If the pelvis is starting to roll in towards you or your arch in the back is too high, leave the left foot on the floor and then we can move the right foot. So they're quite strong movements. So check your form, and if it's not working out, just put the foot on the floor. If you want to add your arms in, you can. So as the right foot lengthens away, we've still got that pull on the index finger. So it feels like the arm is being drawn out of the shoulder. The ribs go with it. It's a body-wide event. All these movements are body-wide events because we don't move the arms and legs from the joints. If we can help it, we want to send them back to the center of the body. So opposite foot to hand, and just alternating on both sides. We want to do 5 on about 5 on each side if we can. I have no idea how many we've done. So just have a play. The importance of these movements is not the gross movement itself, it's how is my arm dropping back down through the shoulder? How is my leg connecting to the center of the tummy? Am I being led by the big toe and the inside of the heel? Or is everything happening through the long little toe side? So next time we come back to center, I'm just going to bring the feet down onto the ground. Take the soles of the feet together and let the knees just drop out to the side. Again, we're leaving the sacrum rolled away. You're going to feel this maybe on the inner thighs, through into the inside of the hips. So long little toe sides, pull down into the ground, feet go down towards the end of your mat. So a little bit like frog swimming. Feet are out at 10 to 2. I'm going to zip the feet together, so big toes together, heels together, and we're coming, the heels get dragged all the way back to the center. Soles of the feet come together, knees go out to the side, long legs down towards the end of your mat, zipping the feet together, coming all the way back. This is where your sticky mat is probably going to be more of a hindrance than a help. Knees go out to the side. So it's just like breaststroke swimming. Something like that, but a little bit more intentional. And we're just going to do one more. Soles of the feet together, knees out to the side. Long down towards the end of the mat and then coming back to the centre. This is good. I'm going to let the elbows come out to the side, just sort of arms in the shoulder height. So sort of T position, shoulder height. Let the ribs sink back. Let the collarbones be free. Collarbones feel like they're going to slide off the edges of the shoulders, but we want there to be space between the collarbones and the chest. Because there's lots of funky monkey nerves and all sorts of fun things that run underneath that. So we don't want the collarbones to be pinned onto the front of the chest. It's not useful. I'm going to take the feet hip width apart. And we're just finding the long little toe side of the right foot and the big toe joint of the left foot and the inside of the heel. When we pull these parts of the feet down into the ground, long little toe side of the right foot will take the knee out to the right side, big toe joint and the inside of the heel on the left foot will take the knee over to the right side as well. So we're coming into our lane twist. Let there be a nice roll through the back of the pelvis. We haven't changed its orientation, so if your body, it's not a conscious movement, but if your body flattened your spine before you moved, go back to the beginning, reset your pelvis and let the back of the pelvis just roll on the floor. Elbows, shoulder blades, broad chest. Both shoulder blades stay on the ground. You'll feel the nice stretch through the front of the chest, up into the underarm, and then through into the hand. The head is still free. The neck still hasn't arched, so notice if you pulled your jaw in. If you press with your big toe on the left foot, it will give you a nice stretch through the quad. If you press through the inside of the heel on your left foot, it'll drop the leg back into the socket and it will give you more of a stretch in the waist. Whatever you want your movement for. So one or the other or both. And then pulling the feet down into the ground. We're going to come back to center. Resetting the feet, refinding the back of the pelvis. And then this time it's the long little toe side on the left foot. and the big toe joint and the inside of the heel on the right foot. And we're not coming in with any expectation for movement, just work with what is. So we've got a good side and a better side. Just noticing the difference in tone to the muscles, if there is any. Big toe joint will give you a stretch in the quad if that's where you're feeling it. Inside of the heel will give you a stretch in the waist. So we do once more on each side. Let the legs drop back through the pelvis, which rolls the back of the hips back onto the ground and sets us up for our next movement. So long little toe side on the right foot, big toe joint and the inside of the heel on the left. And it's just interesting to notice when we come into these movements for the second, third and fourth times, the changes in the tissues as we come in, things shift and change constantly. Coming back to the center if you haven't already, and coming over to the other side again. Let the sit bones look at the heels. Keeps a nice curve to the lumbers. We don't want to be flattening the lumbers out if we can help it. And we're just going to do one more on each side. You might find that the twist is coming further up the spine as we come into this next movement. Maybe that the head, back of the head is happy to roll, just like the back of the pelvis is happy to roll, so the gaze can look in the opposite direction to the knees. So the knees are going over to the right, then the head's going over to the left. The ear gets very, very heavy. The eyes get very, very heavy. Head and pelvis roll back to the center via the medium of the spine, and we can come out to the other side. Notice any parts that you've skipped over in the rib spine. Got quite, for most of us, quite mobile top of the lumbers and very mobile at the neck, and we tend to just miss over or skip over the stiff and sticky bits of the thoracic. And actually we want mobility to be there. We want there to be a spaciousness here. We're coming back to the center from the left side. We're going to give the knees a nice hug. Have a little rock from side to side. We're going to come over onto whichever side is comfortable for you. We're just going to come up into our square pose. So tops of the feet getting pulled down into the ground. Big toes feel like they're being pulled away towards the wall behind you. And this starts to present the front of the ankle into the ground. So if you get cramp, if you get cramp here in the sole of the foot, when you're trying to take the big toes long, we're going to slide the left shoulder blade up towards the ear and then back down, and then we're going to slide the right shoulder blade up towards the ear and back down. And you keep going like that because we've changed the tensions in the system by laying on the floor. And the most affected by that is the ribs, and it releases a load of slack into the system because we've changed our posture. And then the tissues don't know what to do, and it flares up as cramp in the feet. So just take a little bit of time to let the feet get used to the floor, to let the fronts of the ankles get used to the floor. Let the palms take time to get used to the floor. Where is our weight distribution? Can we get behind the knuckles? We spend a lot of time pressing down through the thumbs quite heavily, or the heels of the hands, so sitting towards the outside of the root of the little finger. So can we shift our body weight into the centre of the palm, get behind the knuckles. They're stronger parts of the hands, but it takes the weight out of the wrists. If it's very mean on the wrists and they're not happy to be in this quite close arrangement, you can just take the hands just a palm length forward, a little bit further forward than the shoulders, and then the pointy parts of the elbows can swing round and look back at the thigh. And again, this creates lift between the shoulder blades and takes the weight out of the collarbones. So from here, can we let the shoulder blades separate so that the chest and the head can lift? So it's sort of the spine can lift out from between the shoulder blades. And then can we bring the shoulder blades together on the back of the body so that the chest and the head drop down towards the floor? And it's okay if this one's a bit elusive at the beginning, but it's fundamental to our movement. We want to be able to have ribs and head that can move independently of the girdles of the collarbone, shoulder blades and arms. You know, we want these bones to be sliding and gliding, and it might be easier on one side than it is on the other. But can we just let the spine lift? Head presses the shoulder blades out of the way and drop, and the shoulder blades kind of come together on the back of the body. They fill in the space, a little bit like the Red Sea after it had been parted, filling back in. And this helps us to get some awareness of what's going on the back of the body. This part that we're moving between the shoulder blades is a part of you that you'll never see with your eyes because we simply can't look round there. So we have to develop our proprioceptive awareness. There's the messages of from your body back to your brain about where you are in space, but it's a part of us that not a lot of us spend much time bringing our awareness to. So the next time we come back to neutral and see if you can find neutral. Again, we're thinking about our 3 smiles. So can we let the sit bones float away from the back, from the top of the legs? We've got that smile at the bottom of our bottom, create space between the pelvis and the hip. We've got the front of the ribs being drawn back to the back of the ribs. This gives us, again, smile in the base of the back of the ribs, which lengthens the lumbars and draws the pelvis away. This is the definition of core strength, because it's the muscles that support the spine on the inside. From there, can we let the heart and the lungs float? They're a slightly different pressure to the rest of the body, so the viscera literally do float like balloons and bump around on the inside of our spine. So there's a support system there that then helps us to feel that the head can be extended away from between the shoulder blades and out. A bit like the tube of toothpaste being squeezed between the shoulder blades and the head and the neck of the toothpaste. And we start to create space. We're thinking about the spine. For me, I like to close my eyes. However you visualize, we're thinking about the spine. Can we touch in with each individual vertebrae from the base of the skull all the way down through the neck? Imagining the spine bones all the way down through the rib spine. Can we just create space between the discs? There's 10 thoracic vertebrae. Takes us down into the floating ribs. Can we create space at 11 and 12 where the floating ribs are, and that'll take us down into the lumbers. So then can we touch in with the lumbar vertebrae? Tends to be a little bit dark when we get down into the pelvic region, awareness wise. So can we just take time? Notice how the tissues feel. You can give the tail a bit of a wiggle from side to side. Can we let the hip flexors go a little bit? And let the sacrum, that drawbridge of the sacrum, but of course now we've changed our orientation, but can we just let that sacrum roll away a little bit? It's like a tail uncurling like bracken. And you know when you've got it, because when the tail rolls away, we get this restored curve to the lumbar, to the low spine. So just going to let the sit bones slide back towards the heels. It's just like rolling, just like sliding back on the runners of the seat in a car. I know they're all electric now, but you used to be able to pull the bar up underneath the seat and just slide back. So it's imagining that your pelvis is sliding back on the runners at the top of the legs, and that your chest is sliding back at the runners at the top of the arms. So that retains this lovely length that we've created in the spine. Fingertips can go forwards. Remember that your arms pull the ribs with them. So we get space at the center of the body, at the waist. And just letting the head go forwards, forwards, forwards. The nose will be drawn back into the back of the head, and we get lots of lovely space in the neck. Let the feet pull down. Let the hands pull down. So when the hands and the feet pull down into the ground, the response that we get is a spaciousness in the joints, and we start to pop back up into our square pose. And this is a training all of its own, because the habit that we have is to push the floor away. All humans do it, as far as I can gather. We get this idea that we need to push the floor away. So when we come back into our square pose, we're quite rigid and we're quite propped through the bones. Whereas if we change our intention, and that's all it is just changing our intention so that the hands are getting pulled down to the center of the earth, the feet get pulled down to the center of the earth. And because we're pulled down and the fascial systems fire, we naturally float back up into our square pose. I hope that's making sense, and if it's not, give me a wave and we can do it again. But just keep exploring that idea that we're pulled down into the ground, and when we're pulled down into the ground, there is a response of upward lift from the body. We don't have to do as much as we think we do, because actually pushing down into the ground and employing our favourite muscles is just pushing and pulling the body around, and eventually it might not be useful, but it stops us levering through the joints. So just finding that nice, it's a rhythmic movement once we get into it, of taking the sit bones, drawing back. The hands still get pulled down into the ground because this creates a spaciousness to the whole system. So we're not collapsing back into our child pose. And it's the same when we're pulled down into the ground and we come back into our square pose. We feel very light and buoyant. For those of us that are a little bit further on in the journey, you might find that the toes tuck under and there's a downward dog of sorts to be had here. But again, our downward dog is not because we're levering ourselves off the floor, it's because we get pulled down into the ground. So the initial lift for our downward dog comes from underneath the ribs. The ribs lift first. The initial movement is up. The ultimate movement is back, but of course, because we've got the toes tucked under, I'm going to run into the legs, and then the feet have to get pulled down into the ground. We have to transfer from the sit bones to the feet, and then everything gets pulled down into the ground, and we get this sort of, you know, it's like a puppet. Puppet sort of a dog. This is what. Giraffe. So we've got our, you can watch this on the replay, we've got our lovely Philip, fascial Philip. We take gravity away from him underneath with his button, he falls down. But when we pull down through that gravity button underneath, he pops up. So we want to come back to that and keep coming back to that way of moving. And we feel that our gravity buttons get pulled down into the ground. So our movement becomes very slow. It also becomes very mindful. We start to pay attention to how are the hands being pulled down into the ground. If we're pulled down by the wrists, that will give you the back side of your arms into your underarm. You pull down just through the knuckles and the fingers, you'll feel that be all in the front of the arm up into the shoulders. Outer edges of the hands, of course, will give you ribs. Inner edges of the hands will give you the inside of the arm into the front of the chest. Same with the feet. So as the toes start to get pulled down, big toe joints will fire the inside of the legs. Outer edges of the feet will fire these big muscles on the outsides and outside of the pelvis. So can we play with those? Inside of the heels getting pulled down towards the ground. They might not meet the ground, but the inside of the heels being pulled down towards the ground will give you lift at the groins. So where the leg connects to the inside of the pelvis, pelvic bones there. It's important that we connect the whole of the handprint and the footprint and then translate that through the major joints of the shoulder and the hip, and then connect that all into the spine. Then we get a body-wide event, body-wide movement. This is good. So having a rest in your child pose for a moment. And just noticing the breathing. Just taking a moment to let the ribs get nice and broad. And then we're just going to find our way up to standing. So whether that's coming back through tucking the toes under, you've got a moment there just to find the foot and the connection to the hip if you want to come through your squat pose. If the knees are not having any of that sort of nonsense, just find your way up to standing in a way that's comfortable for you. And then just coming through smoothly in my screen. Okay, so we're just finding the feet And again, we're just thinking about where are we landing in the feet. We've been talking about this a lot in the last few sessions. Getting back into that front of the ankle, center of the foot. Let the sacrum lift. And again, we're looking at the lift of the sit bones with that smile at the bottom of your bottom. And then can we bring the ribs in towards the spine? And if we put index finger and a thumb on the base of the rib, and then can we put an index finger and a thumb just underneath the collarbones? So we've got this little bit of a lift up and just a little bit of pressure taking us back. So we're lifting out of the waist. I need a top with a big V here. We're lifting out of the waist, and it lengthens the thoracic, but it sends the head back into its appropriate position. For a lot of us, we're here. That's an exaggerated view, but the ribs collapse into here, the shoulders come up a little bit, and the head goes forwards, kind of leaves us there. So we get into the ribs under here, lift up, lift back, get into the collarbones under here, lift up, going back. You'll feel the shoulder blades descend the back of the body, and the whole lot starts to hang down from the back of the head. We're creating space all the way through. And it starts to mess around about how we're going to distribute the weight through the feet. And let that happen. It can feel a little bit unstable because we're not sure, should we be back towards the heels or forwards towards the toes? But we start to just find that process of coming down through the spine and letting the body weight then distribute out and through into the ground. And you'll know when you've got it because the kneecaps will drop, front of the hips will start to soften and open, and the pelvis starts to shift forward, but we don't lose that little bit of a tilt to the pelvis. Like I say, for a lot of us, pelvis is tilted under, it's got this lovely flat bottom syndrome that they're now trying to capitalize. But you can see, because I'm wearing the right clothes today, if I pull this here, where we want to be is we want to have curves to the spine, but tilting the pelvis under, you can see, if I can do it, you can see how that flattens everything out. Bottom disappears, but also we get this flat spine, and it is destabilizing to the lumbars to have that. You know, things then aren't supported in the way that they should be, and they start to shift about. So create the space at the hip to let the pelvis float at the top of the legs. The center of the foot will have to start to work a little bit harder, and it should, because the bones and the structures here are designed for that. So let the feet connect with the ground. You end up with feet that feel like dinner plates. There's a much larger surface area than we started off with. So from here we can take the hands. We can start with the right foot stepping forward. And we can take the right hand in the left hand. And just we're letting the arms go back through their sockets, through the shoulders, into the side of the ribs, and down into the waist. And what we feel is that if both feet get equally pulled down into the ground, do we start to get space on the front of the hip? The back leg feels like it gets pulled out of the waist. The arms just keep lifting the ribs and supporting the head. So the top of the body looks after itself. And we start to move in two directions from the divide at T12. So the lumbar's hanging down and the thoracic coming up and supporting into the underside of the head. And we can step the right foot back and we can take the left foot forward. And the same process, we're not too worried about what the two sides feel like because they may be different. Change hands if you haven't already. So the left hand into the right now, being supported by the right. And again, can we just let the legs connect through the hips into the underside of the ribs and then hang down again. So there's kind of this reciprocal exchange happening. It's not really a movement, it's just it's a reciprocal feeling. Legs connect up into the other side of the diaphragm, diaphragm connects down into the legs. And we're just going up, down, up, down, up, down. And it helps everything to feel like it's relaxing. It's not relaxing because obviously we're stood up, but it helps us to identify the overworkers in the chain. Arms through the sockets into the ribs just helps to take the weight of the top of the body off everything. And then just letting the arms come down, stepping the feet back together and give the arms a nice shake. Giving the legs a nice shake, it's good. And take the feet a little bit wider than hip width apart. And again, we're coming down to the outer edges of the foot, big toe joint, that sort of stuff. Can we find the inner edge of the heel? And we can just spread the toes. We'll make little circles with the heel. We'll make space into the ankle, softness into the ankle. And the back of the knee just starts to get pulled open a little bit. And we want that because it sends the thigh bone, sends the femur back up through the socket into the underside of the ribs. And we start to get space. So we can bring the hands onto the hips and just sliding the hips from side to side. We'll get into the top of the adductors there. Might be a little bit snug. So can we just start to find space opening up on the inside of there. And this is useful because a lot of the time we've got a lot of grip going on around the hips. And the adductors get leant on a little bit. So, and that affects the inside of the knee. So can we just create space there? This is good. We're going to come back to the center. Hands can just rest onto the hips. Drops the shoulder blades down the back of the body. And then we're just going to drop the right heel down into the ground so the toes can come off the ground. And we've got that nice rotation. My hands come off my hips, so there's not a nice rotation because the hip's going with it. Hip stays facing forwards. And we're not looking for end range here for those of us that are very flexible at the hip. Just because we can doesn't mean that we should. That pull of the heel takes us out of the hip and back into the tummy so the leg is free. But can we just explore what it is to have that range through the hip joint? Femur just turns in the socket. And as the toes come back down to ground, we feel the front of the leg fire. And it gives space to the waist. And we can move the foot back and come through the other side so the heel pulls down into the ground. And you might find that at first that the hip wants to go. The hip wants to go with it. It's kind of how we are. But we're using the interface of the foot to keep talking back to the hip, to keep talking back to the side of the waist. Have we got lift out of the waist, which leaves the leg free to move? The answer could be no. But we just keep finding our way into that rotation. And as the toes come down, that gives us the feedback through the front of the leg, the kneecap stays dropped, and that gives us space into the front of the hip here. It's really good if we've got tight hip flexors. Helps the hip flexors to start to stand down a little bit, because when we've got lift through the side of the waist into the underside of the rib, the hip flexors don't have to work so hard. So you might feel this quite a lot in the obliques. Coming back to the center, we're going to do one more on each side. Find the feet, pulling down, lift up through the underside of the ribs. Pull down through on the right heel. Take the foot out to the side. Coming back to the center. And you can alternate the sides, or you can just do a few on one side and then back to the center. Making sure that the shoulders aren't coming up round the ears. And then we're going to just come back to the center, walking the feet all the way back in. Going to give the legs a nice shake. And we're coming down to sitting. And just finding the sit bones. So again, we're thinking about, doesn't matter if the legs are straight out in front, doesn't matter if they're folded in, but we're looking not to be on the back of the pelvis, we're looking to pull down through the sit bones. And then we can just bump over onto the other side of the sit bone, so that we've got this nice lift through the pelvis, out of the top of the pelvis into that lumbar curve again. It brings us back into the underside of the ribs. Now, if the ribs are starting to flare here, you can see that mine are, we go at the front of the ribs to bring them back into the spine. And it's hard work because we need more length to QL. And if you've got QLs that overwork because the front of the tummy is underworking, this might feel a little bit funky. So just keep going with the pull down to, you know, there's a reciprocal movement to be had here. We can relax, find the sit bones pull down. That will get us into this nice upward lifting movement. We stay as long as it's good. Hands onto the, or fingers onto the pointy part of the front of the ribs. We'll give you this length out through the QL at the back. Drop the shoulders. Let the tummy work for its living. If the legs are out in front, we want the knees to be bent at this point. Forgot to say that. Because we want the pull down through the heels. And eventually what we start to find is that as we move in and out of this movement, the ripple effect, if you like, keeps coming up through the spine. It gets further up into the ribs, and the ribs start to free up. It goes further up through into the neck. And we start to feel it coming up into the underside of the head. So if it's nice, once we've sorted our ribs out and we know that the ribs are going back towards the spine, then we can take the thumbs and just slide them underneath that bobbly bit at the base of the skull. And we just let the head sit back into the thumbs. We're creating a shelf for the skull to sit on or to sit into. And from there, the shoulder blades descend. The spine can hang down from the underside of the skull. And we start to get a translation all the way down into what will land just at the front of the sit bones, or it feels like it lands just at the front of the sit bones. And the legs will have to keep rearranging themselves, particularly for the hip flexor ones of us. I am one, so we just keep waving the feet. We just keep coming back into the sit bones, pulling down. We just keep coming back into the thumbs and lifting out. And you're going to run into funky muscles that don't want to let go, which is why we just keep hanging out here. And we just let the backs of the knees start to open and soften? Can we let the heels get nice and heavy? It all helps us to drop back behind the hip flexors. So front of the hip, remember the front of the hip disappears into the top of the leg. It's not needed. It's good. We're going to bring the hands down behind the knees. Just bring the knees in towards you. Give the knees a nice hug. It is nice to lay on your back and have a proper hug and a little rock from side to side, then do. If you're happy laying on your back and you want to bring your feet down and just have a couple of breaths with your eyes closed, you can. If you're sitting up and you're comfortable here, taking the gaze either into the floor or just have the eyes closed. And just noticing your breathing. And then just opening your eyes. Coming back to center, taking a moment to check in with yourself. Notice how you feel. Good. It's been a pleasure as always. Thank you so much for joining me. Oh, happy bank holiday. I hope that's useful.
That was hard work.
It was hard work. Oh, okay.